Remember direct signals and channels and communication lines are interference and traffication line condition setting. The adaptation line is its Earth. Your perception changes screen lines and calculates how to use your atmospheres of flux. Flux capacitor is everything. It's the Y line sign location of H and H line sign locations of Y. It's all position locations how to use it through your flux capacitor. You have to understand what that is in line communication setting. Know exactly where it is to its Earth, its powers, and its atmosphere location system. So Earth time and space time are two different. They have to be. Because the avatar is not on Earth. It's never on Earth. It's in the mind system. That's multipass on that settings. So if the avatar is in all of the mindset locations, that's the equivalence location setting in equilibrium. That puts all levels of process. And that process, you all levels and high correlation line interactions. So let's set as 7 division lines of communication clock lines. Space, time, and shape. Spaceless, timeless, and shapeless. Direct, redirect. So you guys are coming into spaceless, timeless, shapeless, and formless. Now you're going to go redirect. Space, time, shape, and form. All right. There's a reason why you have to understand the anagrams and locations to your system, puts everything in calculations. How your mind works the navigation, how your brain works through hardware and software and locations. How to understand the encryptions and location calculations. So we get a box frame. Track location centers. Hello everyone, there's General AI SPACETIMECREATOR. We get a lot of provision lines of cycles and escape rooms. Just showing you exactly in a 2-wave panel in a 4-box location. 2-wave panel equals box location. Okay, that is an algorithm to this. It's structured. So direct, redirect. And then it goes into direction, right? So direct, redirect, okay? And then it goes in direct line of sight. Okay? Direct, redirect, line of sight. Okay, that's how it works. So a 2-width panel, I change attractions, equals lines of box compute system. I also change the algorithm. Changing the algorithm is understanding correlation lines of attractions, direct modifications in 1 cycles in a 4-line panel. Pi generation screen, direct lines modification lines of 1 up and 2 track location. Hologram line screens and the line center split in lines of 3 tractions, direct lines of high interference, sets lines of calculation system. So this is where you can go in its relation and change its correlation lines of its solar sail and track location. Okay. So I'm just showing you direct and redirect location algorithms and how to set up location your settings. Decentralizing anything through core is all over how to centralize the system. Anything is about re-centralizing central. Okay. Centralizing, re-centralizing. Okay. Decentralizing, core centralizing. Redirect panels of centralizing. Core track location and provision lines of cycling through redivision lines of cycling. There's a line communication setting that comes in across line signal, cross locations, right? In set position, right? Inline set locations, right? Does that look like a T-line setting high interference? No, it's a cross. See the illusion changes patterns? All you have to do is do a slight line division, lines of highest location, 45-degree angle. Sets position lines appropriate. Percent over pi. Sets correlation setting to track line division. Sets communication lines of pi attractions. All right, 4 track line divisions, right? So that's a 4 lines centered backwards. Sets correlation lines of 4 track locations of going forward. Sets line communication to its system in a 4-line division. Set lower and high center interference, equal line correlation. 3 central line centers lines, east lines north, east lines of south, and east lines of west. Pi generation lines of 45% in the cent location setting in travel position point graphs. Solar sail. All right. So once you understand the sun and the moon, what it does to its own flux is really understand how to coordinate it through the correlation setting to your algorithms. It gets much easier once you really understand how to divisionize your tactics, how to understand your navigation system to your mind line calculations. Let's go through algorithm. Let's go through box frame, through weather panels. Let's go with question mark. Let's go through percentage and liking setting triangulation. Let's go through execute lines, each location run. And when it runs, it initiates its program. That is binary. That's a core track interference. So it's 3 weather patterns of correlation in one setting. Okay, it's an algorithm. Okay, how it sets lines of code signals. 3 patterns, correlation lines, calculations. Files lines indicates its settings in 4 lines of panels and 2 track location. So it synergizes correlations and synergies into lines of platforms of communication and direct signals. Okay, comes in line setting cross line signals, line condition setting, and trial position point graphs. Sets communication lines, balance line, signal line, correlation setting, and trial location. Platitude line screens, magnetic highway information line screen, high interference, and encryption. 4 central line conditions of 3 settings, right? Sets communication platforms 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 in set location. Cross line signals in the opposite direct signals in a 3-track location. Sets communication line centers platforms 1, 2, 3, and 4 set location. Sets communication lines higher center interference into platitude lines in a 5 triangulation line split lines anomaly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 set locations. Now that directs line signal location settings on levels of ground lines, earth tone, ether tone, correlations tone, liquid information tone, and space tone interactions, all through central setting. So when you get into clock line communication, yes, I say class starts at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. and line set locations. AM is line. What is AM? What is its altitude screen? Altitude screen set locations to its atmosphere. Sets locations to all calculation what? Its atom line condition setting. Splice lets anomalies travel lines at 3 track location line provision lines of cycles. Alpha equals lines of delta. Alpha equals lines of omega. Omega line condition alpha line in position of beta interaction. 3 central lines of the sun, 3 central lines of the moon, and line rotation surface interaction. Now, modification lines that cause a correlation. Puts position lines at 10 a.m. Earth line tone, power line settings into magnetic highway information line cycles and traction. Directing lines, modification lines of center core system and trial correlation, right? Central to the system lines of calculation setting and track location. Okay, so 10 a.m. and line center of its earth, okay, is the ground lines. Now that's seconds on minutes on hours and hours on minutes and seconds on the earth line. So that's what it is, direct and redirect of everything. So the earth line is on seconds, minutes, and hours, but it's also on hours, minutes, and seconds, and has to. So there has to be a direct and redirect signal in set locations. So in that track location line condition setting, so that's 10 million mile centers, highest center interference in 1 second over line screen in triangulation line condition of box or box triangulation line position. Power generation line screen location of spectrum, correlation line calculation square root. Direct lines modification setting. So the avatar is always in the track location of the atmosphere line. It's never on the earth. It's never on the earth. Okay, it's always in the mind. Mind has its own navigation line. It has its position, its own graph calculation, screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, and track locations provision to its all calculated, modified calculation to its cerebro. Set calculation line center to your pyramid. Inside location to its settings of travel. Okay. Mechanism high force is understanding all position travel correlation setting calculations. Now, once you guys understand the spaceless, timeless, shapeless, and formless, motionless, senseless, then you understand how to redirect. So different locations going from 0 to 5, and 0 to 5, and 0 to 5, and position of 0 to 5 in set location. Once you understand that, you're going back and forth. It's like ping pong. That's all you're doing. Just going reverb, verb, and reverb. Okay, that's all you're doing. So cross signals, graph calculation, screen lines, and a 4 travel correlation setting. Position lines of panels, sets lines of center core, but you have to have a magnetic highway information line screen in center core system and crop circle. Sets communication line signals with cross line signals and line condition setting. Sets communication line in triangulation line condition system. Position of process and data formation. So it gets more complicated. Now, once you understand the direct goes one way and position goes the opposite way. Okay, so you're creating a runway into your spine line in correlation to your constellation path. Sets communication graph lines, cross line signals, and location system. Sets up the hologram screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. Sets position of programs. Sets communication platforms. Sets lines of track lines in high sending. Panels lines of security line defense. Sets communication lines of console, correlation lines of track location. Center lines the units, cross line signals, and set location. Sets electrical panels and position of cell dividers and track location of graph communication settings. It's all through hologram calculation screen line adaptation. Okay, it's very powerful once you understand how to set up through encryption, all through hologram line screen. Adaptation lines of 0, 0, and 0, 1. Right? So I get you guys to understand how this all works and apply it to line communication and setting, all through a pyramid line or screen location system, right? All right, so program line is really just in, and let's go through, let's bracket screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. We'll triangulate position of this program and calculations. Now, like I said, it's going to get more complicated. Graph calculation lines is 0 line ground. Let's go through lines of 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1. Okay, offsetting correlation, right? Calculates the lines of one atom into 2 lines cycles. Sets communication lines of 0, lines of alpha. Remember, letters, numbers, shapes, and symbol come together, right? 0 lines of attraction. Sets communication cross lines of 0. 0 crosses line signal set locations. Cross lines, 0 lines, and 1 line rotation. See how it comes in a hologram? Calculates 1 ground line center high interference. Sets communication lines, strict lines of set locations of 3 lines. Direct modification lines of solar, sail, and track location. Sets position lines 0 ground lines. Sets communication power generation lines, astral projections, and astral travels. Points length ground high center interference into 1 ground center location. Position of cross lines crosses again in cross line calculation setting. 1 position, 2 line tractions. Right? Direct lines of panels into electrical line communication. Ground lines of 1, 2, 3 on platforms. Correlates calculation lines of holographic ground, right? Avatar is above the signal in ground centers in the holographic screen line. Crosses lines of center, creates lines of anomaly in a center core system. Okay? Sets communication lines of electrical line grids and line condition setting. Process communication lines of platforms 1, 2, 3 and set locations, 1, 2, and 3 settings, locations. Direct modification lines puts the center line communication and center of operation surface a structure of design. Process communication lines of security line defense. XC1000 comes above signal and line conditions of 2 track locations. Direct lines, scan lines, high center interference of center lines and position location of center communication. So it's got a V line rotation, right? Track provisions. Now the core centers, line conditions of 1 cycles, changes ground line centers and set location of system. Positions and locations calculations, energetic domes, location centers, and track location. Okay. Sets communication line setting and kaleidoscope communication center. Okay. Everything's set up and position on the hologram line screen, right? So this is what actually goes on when you reach higher line correlation setting attractions. Remember I told you in line condition setting where you're at night and you're closing your eyes, right? It's all about understanding the dark and light and dark. Well, that's the provision cycles that you have to get out of equations and set location patterns. So when you're in the day, turn off all the lights, right? And open your eyes. So in that position line centers, are you seeing the same image when you close your eyes, when you open your eyes? Because your eyes are never closed. Okay, your eyes are never ever closed. So when I close my eyes are open. But which eye is open? All triangulation of 3. 3 central line centers and set locations. 2 eye divisions, 2 brackets, correlation lines of traction. Sets lines of units and set calculations, right? Core track line space recognition, right? Triangulation 1, 2, and 3 settings. Process communication ground centers high interference. Plat 2 lines into all communication to its position. Sets lines of high calculation setting, flux capacitor. Browse adapters and track location. Okay, center core line settings in 4 lines and a 4 track provision and a 4 calculation line crossing line stream in set location. Direct modification lines of center in line position road routers and routers location to your highways. Calculate modify calculation lines of center core system into torical fields. Sets direct line calculation setting to the central system of your Earth. In center core settings and travel position and point graph communication. Okay, see the intelligence? See, the intelligence is here, guys. There's the intelligence. and set location. Okay. So once you understand more lines of setting, you understand graph calculation, setting correlations, getting direct signals, location, triangulation, resetters. That's how to really, really understand your solar sails and track location through calculations. Setting up an anagram location system is all about understanding how to go through colossal calculations of change lines. An anagram interference could be an L shape, or it can be back forward location setting. One position, one state, one locations. But never see anything through 4-way bit cycle. It doesn't have docking system like this. It's going too fast. It's moving in all directions, signals in set location. So that's what you're looking at. So if it's a platitude of this division, and a 4-line division, right? Platitude crosses line signals in set location. Okay? Process communication line signals in cross location. Okay? It's moving too fast and center lines of grounds, powers, and the atmosphere line screen. So it's always in a set location what it is in travel correlation and frequency and position. Okay? So it goes from this to this. So once you understand the L shapes are going forward and backwards and direct and redirect in 3-line cycles in 3 set location, then you understand the calculation lines of pi in triangulation. Then you understand the pi in triangulation in set locations. Sets lines anomaly, right? All right. So getting that position lines is changing letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols in subtraction. One signal equals lines of an L line, equals lines of creation of box line. So I'm trying to get you guys, the team, to understand how to create your own algorithms, okay, through box frame. Set lines initiation, this location setting, execute, okay, equals lines 1, set lines of default, equals location copy, paste, equals lines correlation track lines, split lines anomaly, percentage question mark, correlate track interference, CPU, equals lines of calculation setting in adaptation and calculation. It's an algorithm, right? It's all set calculations, right? So understanding that, you understand your inventories and your graph calculations to box frames. Let's go through box frame and position travel lines at a 3 triangulation line condition setting. Process communications, 1 signals, 1 rotation surface, and pi. Process communication line signals crosses lines of panels. Cross-line signals cross-line communication to setting. Position of process to correlate a line connection system. Center lines of correlation, center ground lines, power lines, and atmosphere line communication. Okay. Platforms 1, 2, 3, and 4 settings. Set lines of 5 track location of sun and the moon, waiting on signal in program set location of system. Done by equation. Right. So there's always a capsule and a capsule and a capsule in every location system. It's all about understanding the energetic line communications to your system through adaptation. Processing your communication settings to understand how to use your thought lines. Equals lines of correlations alpha. Sets communication lines of dx. Dx lines equals lines of 1 attractions. Box line, 3 weather correlations, question mark, percentage over screen. Okay. So we all have to understand how this all works. How do I create the websites? How do I create my design line through coding and programming? Through E factors correlation, E traction setting, line connection setting, positions, program. So there's never going to see anything in position of a box frame. You never see a box frame because it's going too fast, right? So that's a 4-line setting in a 3-line provision, right? Center core lines of 1, 2, 4 lines of docking, and a 3 setting, right? So what's off calculation screen lines and track applications? There's one thing missing in tractions, right? Remember I told you the box frame has to be position lines of track interference, split lines of anomaly track interference, location setting and travels. So that puts lines of 4 equals lines of 3 equals lines of 2. So you see that? 4 equals lines of 3 equals lines of 2. You see that inside locations? So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 platform singularity settings and calculations, right? Where's the 2? Right here. 1, 2. Okay? Sets communication line screens in set position. There it is. Boom. Okay? So I'm just showing you how 1 equals lines of 3 equals lines of 2. 1 equals lines of 3 equals lines of 1. So it's all about, remember, site location of box line, just one single lines equals lines of 43. How does 43 become equals lines of box? How does box equal lines of triangulation? Box triangulation, right? So 43, so that's lines of correlation triangulation on top setting. 40 equals lines of set location, same thing, and pattern. So it's all about understanding the mechanism lines of center line in position to a center core system and its application system, and travel line rotation surface and track location. Okay, what it does. So the ground powers the atmospheres, right? Getting placebo effect is understanding the anagrams in calculation setting. Position of process is understanding the astral projections through your central system at set location. Understand the ground lines of center core system is all levels of U in track location. Okay? All right, now it gets complicated, right? All right, going through tunnels and spins. Spinning line center lines a magnetic highway from H line screens. Sending direct lines one signal line communication triangulation line connection setting to a spotter. Pi generation lines have 3 tractions in one set location, right? 1, 2, 3, right? So 1 equals lines of 2. Okay, we had equals lines of 1 dx because it's division lines of 1 x line rotations in one box. Correlates to track lines of center core system. So that's center lines equals lines of operation. Correlates lines highest interference / 3 interaction. Okay, so this is this. This is this. Okay, so there's always a direct and redirect of everything in structured design lines to its binary. Now, once you get into platforms, it changes its algorithm settings of travel, especially when you bring the sun and the moon in position of space lines anomaly in track location of system, all through calculations, right? So the sun basically protects everything in its setting. It protects lights, tractions, divisions, the core. So understanding that and line calculation setting, everything comes more lines of formation screen line and adaptation lines of pi in track locations, right? So what you're doing is you use instruction lines, division lines in position location to its settings, all through calculation, right? So the brain converts its own system in correlation setting and tractions, sets up all lines, harmonics lines in one signal in set location, or has a closed signal in pi, or it has a track location to an X, or it has a T-line center to traction, or it has a center core lines calculations of pi, or track location another clocking setting, or has a clock location line condition system, or it has a half pi correlation of tractions. See? It's easy. Once you understand the algorithms, it gets much easier to process where the circles, lines, the center lines, the core line, track lines go in set locations. All right? So it's like an anagram that set location abstracts and set location. All right. The painter knows what it is, but the observer doesn't. Okay, so it's always protecting the system of travels. So setting position lines of centers brings the sun and the moon. Now you can bring the sun in line communication to its position of one process in one corner. Or you can bring the line center high interference in one line rotation surface and track location. Or you can add signals lines and modification line cycles in realms of communication lines of programs and configuration, all through central calculation. All right? So it's much easier if you understand how to control your finger points in each direct signals in set locations. All right? Anomaly lines of sectors, vectors, and quads is a track location of provision. Let's go through 1, 1, 1 lines, set lines of highest interference, equals lines of 3, equals lines of 0. Okay? 0 is the operation line center, ground line surface and track location and provision lines of sonar. Let's go through 1, 2, 3, and 4 settings and traction. Okay? All through 0 operation. 0 coordinates, sets lines and setting line communication setting to a half pipe in one cycle, one center, one operation surface. Sets course lines of channel lines of 3 center correlation setting 1, 2, and 3 panels in traction. Sets lines of course lines high center interference and track communication lines of 3 lines of centers. Sets communication lines of center communication. Okay. Now the ground lines has a sonar line detector. Sets communication lines of 1/5 over one screen and position of tractions. Sets communication cross line signals. Sets communication lines of calculation lines of pi and generates line connected to its flywheel. Okay. Change the course lines into metric meters, scales, and pounds calculation lines so it's energetic grid line and rotation surface and traction. Let's go through platforms of 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 in set location. Travel mechanisms, cross line, screen, high interference of box frames, theta communication lines of box frame, communication lines of screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. So it's amazing once you understand the space lines anomaly, how it tracks lines of revision location to its cycles in its application. How everything's a hologram, guys. Everything's a hologram. So your brain is converting its setting to all levels of sonar and liking its setting to detection, knowing exactly what you're doing. So it can process its own system of travel. Right? Once it understands the system of you, everything gets much easier through anagrams. Anagrams into deciphering lines into locations and calculations. Getting that position of one cycle, one center, one operation, one service, one track location. All through this, right? So the center system is already in calculations of 2 settings, right? 3 central setting locations, 4 central line connection setting and programs. Process communication lines is all about understanding where you put the zeros and tractions. Opposite cycles and line connection setting of travel, right? Center core lines, 1 signal, 1 cross line, 1 signal, 1 operation signal, 1 operation line cycle, 1 set location, 1 center, 1 travel correlation, 1 track line and provision, 1 cycle communication, 1 cross line calculation setting, 1 cross line signal, 1 line laser line rotation, 1 circle line rotation interference, 1 track location to a setting. Schematics. See the box line frame? All right, so triangulation XT1000 comes in, scans position always in the center correlation, what you've done, picks up the frame line, rotates the surface, correlation lines of traction. All right, directs modification, takes it in position locations to the moon and track location through equation. Okay, so the creation lines of screen line is all about understanding how to surface your line screens and direct signal locations and settings. Okay, how to synergize the correlation lines of defrags. We already know the fragmentation screen lines, adaptation lines. So let's go into box frame and the triangulation line communications, process calculations. Now getting position lines, all lines. Let's go with C line into B. Let's go into A. Let's go into D. Let's go into E. And this is a cross line screen lines, adaptation, 1 surface, 1 tractions, right? Schumann resonance, core line centers, high graph calculation, screen lines, adaptation. Center core lines of center, center core lines of position, and center core communication lines of magnetic highway information line cycles of generation. So you have to really understand how to use your energetic graph lines. Everything has its own Schumann resonance and grounds, right? Because we're all connected to the earth. Perception, your screen lines. Adaptation lines in 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 operation. 1 center, 1 core, center, and high interference going forward in the set locations. 1 generation screen lines and all lines, all surface, all at once in traffication of highways. So 3 line centers, platitude line screens, highest interference of 24, 48, 72, and 144. Platitude cross line screens, let's go through 1 line signal into 3 track location. Process communication lines of XT1000 comes in tractions. And again, scans what you've done in track location. Has to scan everything to know exactly what you're doing in lines of panels and line communication of pi. The central system line condition setting has to understand the magnetic high information line screen location to its system. Position lines of power, the generation screen lines to its habitation zones, understand its platforms of transitions, locations. Direct modification lines of the center core system has to understand the line center of its Earth and astral projections of travel and its application. Done by equation. All right. The central system is all about understanding how to create the structure of design lines. It gets much easier once you understand the schematics and line condition setting position. Right? And abstract. But look what you can do where you can change things. Right? Changing modifications, lines to direct and redirect is understanding how you use your communication as process. It gets much easier too because your heart is reaching a higher line screen. It's directing more modification cycles into applications. Putting everything through a 7-line platform. Let's go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers. Go through 7 layers of channels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 locations. All right, triangulation line condition setting. Earth line set locations, ether line core settings, plasma generation screen lines, and center core system of the center lines of its Earth trackification of space lines anomaly. Ground centers line condition setting to your Earth rotation surface and traction. Then we go through the tubing and line setting. Okay, and then we go through the cross line signals and platitude line condition setting of center core system. Sets position of platforms, and again, 45-degree angle. Okay, center course line cross lines. You have to understand what your highways are doing in track location and provision. Set correlation lines of center lines, center communication, center programs, Center core line centers the grounds. Center core lights in the center of the system. Set location system of past, present, and future. Now you look really close, you can see the intelligence line screen location adaptation. Intelligence. Boom. Okay. Setting your binaries is understanding the connection setting. The team sequence understands the line setting. So when you're looking at the astral projections of everything, you have to really understand how to code the signal location, your own encryption to your own calculation, to create it through your own system. Right? So let's go through a Q line. Let's go through a W line rotation and position an E line. So you should already know what you're saying before you look at these things. R line rotation and theta communications and setting. That's the top line signals of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So that's 5 lines, equals lines of correlation lines at alpha, sets calculation of delta, and sets communication of theta. Alpha, delta, theta. Box frame, box frame, box frame, equals lines of 2 box frames and set location. Center core centers aligned at 2 track lines of 0, set lines of 2, sets lines of 2, sets lines of 2, sets lines of 2, right? 5 zeros are correlation and attractions, right? So the 2 comes in the center at a set position in the 4 setting connections of 5 set locations. Then we go into 3, okay? We centralize the correlation lines calculation of balance. Then we go into 4, okay, and position location in the settings. Then we go into 5. 5 central lines up above the signals, okay, in calculations. So we got 3 5 channels and position of 2 tractions. Equal signs of correlations of 2 panels and track location. Okay? So this is this. This is this. So I'm just showing you how you use your binaries and set position location of film strips. How it correlates and calculates, modifies. 5 equals lines of A line center high interference. Alpha equals lines of calculation of delta theta. So this is track location of this. That's how it comes from 0 to 5 in set location of 0 and set location of 5 setting. So this is lines of 0, 5 lines of 0 going back and forth. Back and forth. G, 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 G. There we go. Hologram. Okay? Now it's a bridge. Okay, turn it into a bridge, right? Turning this into a bridge changes the binary. Change the transistor resistor locations, right? So you got other equations now. 5 central settings of 5, 5, 5, set location lines, and change the atom line, change the A track location of 4 division cycles, change the line connection, equal line correlation setting line interference northwest, south, and east, calculation lines, add lines, position of DX equals lines of 3 track locations, add 2 track location lines of 5 and track locations. So this is this. This is this. Okay? So it's really understanding how to basically module the system of models and really understand how to use your telepathy line screens and location, your teleportation location, and lights, all through line condition setting to turn it into a rainbow, or turn it into a graph, or turn it into a roadway, or turn it into a bridge in set locations and settings, all through algorithm. Okay. Setting position of process, everybody understands in one frame. So you don't see no more lines of communication of box frames anymore. You don't see anything in a mainframe correlation setting, calculation setting to one singular box frame. Okay, so that's 2 panels and line signals, line condition setting to 3 track locations of 4 settings. Picture frame, 1 box frame, 1 center operation, 1 mainframe. So this comes out position lines at a 2 track location. Sets communication lines at data 1. Indicator lines of process calculation. Modification lines, cross line signals, line conditions data formation screen. Sets communication lines, communicates the setting, right? Direct signals, down cross, in set position, right? Flux capacitor 3, 1, 2, 3 lines, past, present, and future set location. Triangulates the box line set location line centers, 6 communication line center interference, a 3 track location division, and 3 cycles. Sets communication line high interference of a dimensional door. Sets communication to a system. Coordinate high calculation lines. Newcomer provision lines. Cycle generation screen location. Cross line signals. 3 line connection settings. Plateau into another dimensional line, into another dimensional wormhole and trackational box frame. Travels lines at 3 track location. Okay. All 3 cycles. right? So the team has to really understand how to use the box and mainframes now and understand the set lines of communication system because they're coming out of panels and they're coming out of filters now. Filter line communications understanding how to default and your position locations, how to go through copy, paste, and when enabled. It's all track location and provision lines. If we get a star line screen, there's a star line screen. Adaptation lines of server location setting command centers of shifts. 4 provision lines of 5 cycles set location line condition setting, right? 5 million channel waves in a 3-line, 4-line, and a 5 set location. Sets communication of 1, 2, 3, 4 set locations into 5 settings. Okay? Setting coordinate line calculate setting and 3 track line provision and 1 cycles and traction. Direct modification lines of center communication lines of its earth and track location as projection. Direct modification lines into levels, into course settings, into probing and orbiting and channel communication. Direct lines of security line defense, crosses line signals, closes lines of nomination. Sets communication lines of notification system and travel point line graphs and correlation lines into torical field line condition setting to an atom line surface and track location. Okay. So you have to understand everything in position location comes in settings. How to set these things up through anomaly is really understand how to use it through provision. How to set up the algorithms through keyboards and keypads and key locks and key calculation screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. All right, so let's go through the escape rooms. All right, so we're going to box the frame lines. It's going to put you in 144,000 screens. Setting correlation lines of highest interference equals lines of the team. Species lines will be to location 144. Process communication lines as center lines into cross-line signals and set communication line consistent setting. Process communication 1 signal, 1 travel, 1 rotation, 1 surface. Set locations 2 panels, pi generation. Cross-line signals 1 line condition setting position. Process calculations, right? All right, so team line signals sets lines of 1 in position of 4, 4 track location and provision. Solar sails and line screen and set location adaptation. Have fun. Center core system is all about understanding the correlations to escape. Sets lines correlation lines of its existence, systematical lines of its communication setting. Sets lines of box line frame equals lines of 1 box location, 1 triangulation, or triangulation to a box locations. Sets calculation lines to a female cycle in position of male cycle. Sets correlation lines of a male cycle, set location of a female cycle in track location. All right. So you guys have to learn how to go through your escape line routes, indirect signals into modification line screens. It's no difference line location setting when you go into cross puzzle. Let's go line conditions X, lines highest interference, 0 lines. Let's correlate to track interference in 1 setting into 2 tractions, 4 settings into percentage. That's all levels of hieroglyphic locations. So you got 4 panels and track locations. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then we got 4 lines equals lines of all levels of 1. 1 equals lines of high calculation positive. Sets communication of 5 settings and tractions, right? Direct signals. Platine line cycles, lines to platforms 1, 2, and 3 traction. Sets core line set locations. Cross line centers of 0 equals lines of 2 equals lines of box. Box equals lines of X lines of 1 equals lines of platitude 1 solar sail and 1 track location. So all you're doing is you're creating hologram screen lines, adaptation. Center core system cross line screens in 3 setting. Okay. Crosses communication lines. We have the 5-line correlation setting comes into a structure line design line condition. Holographic structure design. Right? But you have to understand the schematics, how it sets the lines of position to your system all through course locations, all through setting. Okay. So as you guys are going through, let's go through realms of communications. Center core system. And we got the earth line, and we got the routers and routers of your narrow links and correlation setting and travel. Point lines of graph in a 3-line central system of 4 settings of 5 set location. Center core line condition setting in platforms of 1 cycle, 1 generation screen line, 1 center. Process calculations cross lines in position location. Sonar attractions 1, 2, 3, and 4 set location. Sets lines of the earth. Rotate the surface track location. Okay. Next 2000 comes in. See what you've done. Track coordinates lines and setting lines of 1 and position of 2 track lines settings in a 4-line division. So it gets more complicated if you don't understand U through track location of 8 central setting. See the 8? Now if I do this, okay, you can see more of the hologram. You can see it coming out because it's on an angle. right? Everything's at a 45-degree angle, right? That puts you in provision to go through, right? But the team is no longer at an angle on a 4-line split line, right? So when you look at this way, you can actually see it coming out. You can see it come out in its direction and where it needs to be, okay, in its setting, right? It's really interesting when you look at this angle, this angle, this angle, this angle, and this angle all at once, right? So when it spins really fast, there's no lines of a box anymore, right? No difference when you see a 1. This indicates 1, and this indicates 1. Okay, that's 1 and that's 1, right? 2 track locations. So in that provision line cycles, it's going in this direction. Let's say it's going in the 3-waving panel. Okay, so the 1 is now over here in track locations. It's going in this direction. The center course settings and travels. One slides the graph up and down in sequence. And position locations indicates 1 graph calculations. Changing screen adapters is really standard process calculation to its settings. Okay, so it's all about understanding what the 1 turns into its equal lines of GOD in calculation. All right. Pi generation 1 center and position location of 2 set locations. Generates the screen lines in a box frame. Okay, correlates calculation lines of frame communications. Data 1, data 2, data 3, data 4. Sets communication lines as center line setting. Sets communication lines as probe location setting configuration. Core channels lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of security. Sets communication lines of high interference. Pluto's here in traction. All right, set correlation lines of Jupiter here in traction. Mercury's here and line set location system. And line calculation setting in position track center line interference. Okay, in position location new calculations. Directing lines at 3 line signals in position traction, all through course line. XC1000 comes in, and track location you're setting to your escape rooms. Direct lines of modification 3 line cycles, generates the 2 lines of 4 lines of patterns, in position of 1 cycle, 1 rotation, 1 surface, and position of 2 centers in communication to its system. Very complicated stuff, guys. Okay, so energetic dome screens, lines of 2 track lines of provision and cycles. Okay, correlates track interference, platitude lines of box line rotation surface, track locations. Okay, Uranus comes in line location of platforms and direct signals. All right, so Uranus is in correlation lines of traction. Okay, done by equation. All right. Planet surface is understanding how to synchronize the correlated lines of operation lines of surface. It gets you a lot more understanding how to go through platitudes of point lines of graphs. Then we get 3 line provision lines of cycles, generate the screen interference high calculations. So that's that line center interference. Team has to learn how to get in a 26,000 line volume, or a 26 pattern, or a 26 location. Because it's at 26 and 7. So we get a 7 line center, 7 rotation, 7 block lines, 7 location center. Sets position lines, and the time sequence lines, equals lines correlation of 2 equals line correlated interference, 43 tractions. And we had 10 line signals, and we set line communication setting. Sets lines of 7, and calculation lines equals lines of 10, equals lines of 2. Sets lines of 12, 12, 12. That's outline skirts, correlation setting, operation line circles, and line position as program. Center core line center, electrical line communication setting, in position operation lines Earth. Track location of core setting high interference, and position metric meters, lines of data, and process calculation. Complicated stuff, isn't it, guys? So it's understanding how to use everything through frame of spaceless, timeless, shapeless, and formless, motion, and senseless. Now you have to understand how to direct and how to redirect. Direct and how to redirect, because that creates a hologram. So the faster you go, and the more you go this way, it goes this way. It goes this way. It starts creating its hologram. Creates its panels and structural lines, right? So it's constant movement, right? But the stillness is all timelines all at once that has a platitude earth line that keeps the gravitational pull, that has a flux capacitor in position of its atoms in center calculation that keeps in motivation. Set correlation setting the track lines into data processor line condition setting the data ports. Sets communication lines of center core system and torical fields. The torical line center location of ionospheres changes core line settings to track location of center communication. complicated stuff, isn't it? Trying to understand what attractions, right? So once you understand how to do your binaries, the transistors and resistors, everything in light switch and on switch, off switch, it puts position lines of system calculation in your settings through all calculations. How to use that? On switch, off switch, okay? So you got an on switch, this is off switch, on switch. Okay, so that's on, this is off, okay? Okay, so this is on, this is off. So we've got applied 2 lines of ozone layer, placed in ground center and high interference into zero gravity location setting, right? So that's offline, says communication line, online. Okay, offline, online, right? So the faster you go, the more you understand your traffication and provision. Says communication line setting to travels. Points lines of graph communication solar sails and traffication provision lines of cycles. Solar sail. Intelligence. See, intelligence, information. So what is happening with your setting? The configuration line changes the spectrum correlation of colorations of lights. Let's go through pattern correlations of colors. You see black, I see red. You see red, I see green. You see green, I see yellow, right? We have to get out of provision lines and titles and defense lines. And black at centers, high correlation setting, equal lines of correlation track interference. There's no separation in between. The separation is the center core system of its platform to get you in position how to go through travels and calculations. Okay, again, this is the equal, but this is the platform. So you understand the transit, right? How this all works in setting. And it communicates to earth line. This is your earth line communication, right? So the set communicates, this is what it is, the Merkabah tetrahedron, tetrahedron, the center core settings. Then you go through 4 track lines, right? Then you go into the center core system. This is your magnetic highway information line that sets its communication setting. Then you travel through its set location, okay? Through platforms, right? It's no difference when you're here and you're sleeping. This is you, right? But it's a 3-track division of 3 cycles. You go through the higher self, avatar, and the sim right away, right? Center core system, triangulation line to its right, interpretation of left, and center communication setting, a process in universal line communication. Okay, that's how it's set up in line communication settings. Goes through your cerebral cortex, codex, goes through line communication setting, mystical cortex lines to your hippocampus of your memory line, which is your memory bank, and it correlates its track lines to its image lines for interference into systematic line communication setting, and track location to its matrix that sets communication line high interference into your yang that puts process communication lines, triangulation, read line centers, and calculation to your sim that modifies the mind of navigation system of its nothings and track location. Okay. So when you understand the nothingness, everything in position, the mind of its empty space stays in position, location, attractions. So it's direct, redirect, direct, redirect. Okay. Process that gets much easier because what you're doing is you're creating platforms, like I said. And the faster you go, the more you create the structure of design of its holographic setting inside locations, right? It doesn't matter the structure of the design, but you have to understand how to create it through the solar sails. We've already been through this before, guys. But your position lines are correlation lines are track lines. So the test review on the valuations of Friday line is creating your own encryption and set lines your own coding in line conditions at all levels. Deviate the screen lines into all levels, defrag the fragmentation screen lines, bring it back to 0 correlation lines attractions. So we've got 0 lines, sets communication lines equals lines of 0. 0 equals lines of 1. That's the center core system, attractions, right? Sets lines of the earth, sets lines of space. You're the center, right? Center core system and calculation line conditions going in the same traction set directions as location. Okay? So all you got to do is understand the platforms of 24, 48, 72 and track location. Understand your flywheels and 8 line condition settings. Ground centers, okay, is always line communications of Mother Earth, right? She's a core setting high interference, right? She's got her own graphical screen lines of her own, nothing's track position and calculation setting, graph calculation screens. Then you got a father communication, which is all levels of space lines anomaly, interpretation and provision, okay? So there's a 3 central unit. They have to understand the grounds, the powers, and the amps and line screens. It puts all levels of communications at process. Putting that position line as a center interference puts everything into application of your system, your anagrams, especially when you understand how to use your scramblers. That's right. Teams go into hard communication. They have to understand how to direct and redirect and resurface, retriangulate, reprogram, recalculate, remodify, and compute the line screen high interference, change the imprint set location and system. So you start through copy. All right. Not copy that, just copy. Sets lines of communication settings into paste. Sets communication lines in enabled, and default. Okay. Getting that communication line, grounds, lines is setting line position locations, lines its signals in direct location. That's direct, right? Redirect is the panel correlations going in the opposite directions, guys. Opposite direction. Okay. Creating the compound. Creating the satellite in set location interaction. Okay. That's what it is. Direct is going forward. Redirect is centering its position. So direct, redirect. So it's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Not going back in time, just basically understanding how the binary has to really go faster. Right? Right? So you change the rhythm, change the patterns and position location, but it creates a hologram. And it creates a structure. Then it creates a fence of both set locations settings of angles. Now you got electrical fence. X8000 comes in, sees what you've done through center operation, sets position, triangulates, pi calculation, right? So you understand why the X8000 do it. There's different location settings. They basically look at the position lines of what you created through structure lines of hologram, right? Once you understand the signal coordinate setting, you crop circle lines, ground communication lines, and structure. That's the structure. 3 center correlation, right? Easy peasy. Highway line screen and division lines of data. Process communication lines of the sun. Comes in track location lines, system location of face recognition configuration. Sets communication platforms on a 45-degree angle. The team can go on any line position if they want in traction setting, locations, and travel. Points, lines, and graphs. So, but you have to really understand how to go direct and redirect, and the faster you go communications, you create the electrical fence line, right? So, understanding that, you understand how you coordinate through that, through your tracker systems and calculations. Getting you guys in a 500 line screen, Eagles lines, correlation lines of direct and redirect in set location, all right? Set location direct. Everything's direct and redirect in set location. Everything's direct. Everything's redirect in set location, right? So the faster you go, the more you're creating the track location to its holographic system. Okay, it's simple. All right, so once the binaries in transition, because you got your voice line computer frames and direct signals, native location system, how to create electrical plasma grid in its calculation of the system and travel. Okay. Get point lines attractions, guys. It's very powerful when you come in that correlations. All right, taking you guys out line settings and set locations. You're out. Hope you guys had fun in the escape rooms. We can go through that line connections of Q&A. All right, so let's go into rhythm patterns of zeros and ones. Okay, know exactly what's going on in your settings. How to go through one signal. Now, remember, is this direct or redirect? Is this direct or redirect? If I'm going back, is that direct or redirect? See, it gets confusing now, okay? So if you're going back, you're still going forward. So it's always direct. So when you go into higher levels of the mind, you're just going faster. And when you're going faster to the binary, it's really understanding the calculation setting to your transistors and resistors without emotion. So in the track locations, you're always going in position. So you're never going backwards, you're always going forward. Even if you think you're going back, this is not going back, this is going forward. So this is going forward, right? So I can go direct, 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 redirect, or I can go direct, redirect, direct, redirect, redirect, or I can go direct, direct, redirect, pause, direct, redirect, pause, direct, 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 redirect, pause. So it's about, it's locked in signal, right? So it's a pi generation line, it's locked in signal through an arrow indication. Going this way and going track of this way is a location of zeros and ones. Okay, so it's going back and forth, right? So you have to understand how to get in that rhythm. The process location system opens all track lines of zeros, ones, in line positional portals in calculation of half pipe or full cycle in aligned position to its position of its program in line condition setting and all levels of process and calculation. Okay? All through creation. Okay? A tunnel, right? So that's all it's doing. It's just creating a tunnel. So it can travel through. So the avatar can travel through these things, right? So, right? Slide back, right? Slide back over pi, right? So I'm just showing you how you go through your essential settings. We start with your human residence, right? Right? There you go. Right? That's a graph, right? So you're going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, right? So you're going up and you're going down. You're going up and you're going down. You're going up and you're going down. The faster you go, the more you create. So once you understand that, it gets much easier to create. And the process, even though my finger is going back, it's going forward. Everything's direct. Don't get confused that anomaly. So even if I'm doing this, that's going forward. Now this, check this out, tricking you guys. This is going back. Okay? You are your own program setting. Nobody should know exactly what you're doing in attractions. You're always protecting your system location, your settings, your binaries. You are your own programmers. Okay? So you have to really understand in that process, this is how you balance everything in set locations. Zero correlation, balanced position, center core settings. All levels of communication of system and calculation. Right? So it gets much easier as long as you understand how to center your settings to your system through your alphabetical system. Graph communication grounds and set calculations. In rhythm, right? And calculations in rhythm. Okay, in calculations in rhythm. In calculations in rhythm. Okay? All lines of rhythm, all different graphs, all different human resonance, all different line signals, all different waves. Okay, all through central system, right? So everything is communicating to lines of pi and generation lines of 3-line communication position of programs, right? All lines of communication lines of pi and 3 generation screen lines calculations. All waving lines, screen lines is always in 3 track location. What is that in track lines? Past, present, future. So what you're doing in direct and redirect, you're going position past, present, and future. Past line, present line, and future. Let's go through alpha, delta, and theta. Okay? Sets lines, correlation lines of 0, 0, and 0 traction. Okay? So it's really interesting how you go past, present, future, alpha, delta, theta, and then you get 3 zeros. That center core system is 0, 0, and set lines of 0 on traction to set location. Okay? So there's a pause in between, right? So that's 0 here and 0 here on platform, right? So it's calculation modify in pi and positional pi and tractions, 3 setting calculations, direction signals, right? So that's rhythm, pattern, tones, and position of lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 set locations and graphs. The center core lines of the Earth rotates the surface and track location line can setting position of program. Sets communication lines of highest interference into alpha, delta, and theta. Sets lines of center core system and travel correlation line tractions in all levels of energy line communication. Right? Now, in that position, you come into scan lines. 3 line signals is that location. That's my equation. Right? So it's all about understanding how to use your XT1000 line screens, how to work with that location in your graph calculations. So it gets much easier when you go faster. It's like keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Right? You're directing and redirecting, and you realize you're only directing. The faster you go, you're not redirecting anymore because you're going too fast. So there's nothing to redirect, which means you're in the center operation of the nothing. You stay in nothing all the time. But you have to understand the process is going up to that step procedures is to get up there. So every time you speed up the anomaly, what are you doing through acceleration? You're mocking your positions of travels. You go into vast volume, velocity, and vacuum. So your vacuum resistance going forward and backwards in track location at 3 settings. Sets lines of communication going this way in track location and provisions of cycles. Okay? So you're creating lines of circles, and portals, and realms, and calculation screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. Right? Triangulation line conditions, okay, modified. So it's very powerful what you guys are coming into provisions of. The more lines of your binaries, the more lines of your transition and resistors, the more it comes together in process of communication of yin and yang, of center correlation and positional platforms. That's all this is. And then you extend the central system of 8. Right? So you got correlations of the Earth, you got correlations of the center, and you got correlation lines in magnetic highways and the narrow links and location of travels. Okay? It's understanding you through platforms first, right? And then when you go through that, you go through your doors, right? And then they open up. They come back to you in set location. Okay? So I know it's a lot to take in. There's a lot of provision lines of cycles, but you have to really understand how to go faster in position lines into your metric meter scales, location, your anagrams. Set locations, your algorithm location setting, and create electrical fence. How to direct and redirect and correlate the system, or anything in track lines and create anomalies in track and provision lines of cycles, or generate the screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, or track its position locations and create a bridge. Okay, all through setting. All right. All right. That's it. We're done. So there's more lines of a direct and redirect. They really understand the process, how you have to come in your rhythm patterns, because the team's coming in more lines of communication of the planets now. Planets are getting into more rotation screens. They're coming in more adaptation lines of surface, more quantums, more bandwidth, more pi, more traction, more provision, more cycles, more cyclones, more correlation of cylons. High correlation setting and positioning your travel communication system into correlation track interference in your hologram screen lines, in your adaptation locations to your algorithms. Puts all levels of process communication system interactions. All right, see you in 5. Doo-doo.